This lesson's called Lines in the Coordinate Plane, and notice it's part 1, so we'll do part 2 next time. This lesson is a lot of information, but guys, realize that it is complete 100% review of stuff that you learned in Algebra 1. It's from first semester Algebra 1, so it's been like a full year since you've done a lot of this, but you have seen it before. Doesn't mean I think you remember it all, but know you've been exposed to it. At the end of the day, we're talking about linear equations, which a linear equation has a graph that looks like a line. That's easy to remember because the word line is in the word linear. So we're just talking about lines here. We talked about lines in especially the first 2 lessons of this unit with AIAs, SSIs. So that's kind of why this is like snuck in here. But this stuff doesn't go away. You got to keep remembering how to do this stuff, even for Algebra 2. So let's see what you remember. There are 3 ways to write the equation of a line. The most common way is slope-intercept form. I'm hoping this we do remember, slope-intercept. It's called slope-intercept because M stands for the slope and B stands for the y-intercept, where your line crosses the y-axis. This guy you absolutely have to know. We use it for almost every single example in these next couple lessons. Point slope form, though, you may have never seen this before. Like I know my Algebra 1 students last year, I didn't teach this. That's what it looks like. I didn't teach this because you don't need to know it to be able to solve all these problems. You can just use mx plus b in its place. I am going to show you how to use it. So if you've seen it before, you can stick with it. Or if you like it, instead of mx plus b, you can use it. But you can get away with this guy. Standard form and slope-intercept, though, I'll star those because you definitely need to know these two. So that's standard form, ax plus by equals c. So it looks like this, these 2 examples, when you plug the numbers in for a, b, and c. X and y are on the same side. This method is useful for finding the intercepts, which I'll show you probably on the back how to graph using standard form. But let's just go through kind of like what you're responsible for here. The first 2 examples, I hope we feel pretty comfortable doing this. They just give me the line written in standard form, and they want me to convert it to slope-intercept. Slope-intercept, y is by itself. So ultimately, that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get y by itself on the left-hand side. So I think most of us could probably do that. And you'd start by just moving the x term. You'd subtract it over. And then when you organize the terms on the right-hand side, put x first. So that way it's like mx plus b. So I would write negative 5x plus 18. Then my last step to get y by itself, I would divide by 2. And you have to divide everything by 2 to keep it balanced. What comes in front of x is your slope, and you want that to be a fraction. So I'm just going to leave it negative 5 halves x plus 9. All right, I want you guys to try example 2, and I'll check that next time I see you. For the next example, let's see what they want me to do here with my forms. They want me to write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So they want me to write mx plus b, and the line that I'm talking about needs to go through these 2 points. Okay, so I could graph these 2 points and draw the line. I don't need to. I just need to write the equation of that line. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways of doing this problem. You pick which method you like best. Chances are, I bet people are going to stick with the way I do example 1. But if you like example 2, go with that. It doesn't matter. You'd get the same answer regardless of the method. So if I want to write mx plus b, which is what they want me to do, I need 2 things. I need the slope and the y-intercept of this line right here. You always find the slope first. Whoops. So that's step 1. Find the slope. If you remember, I'm doing a different color here. This formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, that gets you the slope. Okay, let me label the ordered pairs here so you know what we're talking about. This is like xy, xy. There's 2 ordered pairs, so call the first one 1 and call the second one like x2, y2. And then you just plug in. I'll probably give you that on the board for tests and quizzes, so you won't have to memorize it. So on the top, I would just do 10 minus 7. And on the bottom, I would do 2 minus 3. So that would give me 3 over negative 1, which is just negative 3. So that's my slope, that's my m. Okay, so if I kind of started the answer, I know it's going to be negative 3x. I just don't know what the b is. So that's step 2. Step 2, I got to find b. Okay, here's how you probably learned it last year. You probably learned to just take mx plus b and plug in for everything but b, since that's what you're solving for. So here's what I mean by that. You have two ordered pairs, which are x's and y's, so you just pick one of them. I'm just going to pick 3, 7. So, okay, think mx plus b. I know a lot of these letters here. Like, I'm going to use this point. 7 is the y value of this point, so I'm going to plug that in for y on the left-hand side. I know what m is. It's negative 3. And the x value of that same point, you got to pick one or the other. I picked this one. The x value of that point is 3. So I'm going to stick that in where x is. Keep b. I do not know what b is, so write plus b. Then I just solve this for b, and I can finish writing my answer. So I'd multiply negative 3 times 3, and then I'd add the 9 over. I'm seriously running out of room, but b would equal 7 plus 9, which is 16. So now I could finish writing my equation. I have m, negative 3, and I have b. So that would be my answer. Y equals negative 3x plus 16. Okay, another way to do this. So I'm guessing you guys, most of you, learned this method last year. Especially those of you that are freshmen, you may have done point slope though, which is what I'm going to do for this next example. If you don't want to use point slope, you can kind of like throw this method out the window and stick with example 1. Doesn't matter. Okay, but the steps are kind of still the same. At least they start the same. You have to find the slope first, no matter what. So use your formula, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Okay, I'm not going to write the formula. There it is. So I would just do, to find m, subtract the y's, 9 minus 6 on top, 2 minus negative 4 on bottom. Be careful on the bottom. A double negative is addition. So this would be 3 over 6, which would reduce to be 1/2. Okay, so you have to find the slope first. Step 2, though, for this method is use point slope, which is this guy right here. So obviously in this form, guys, m is the slope. That's there, and a point on the line is also used for this. And the point is the x1, y1. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. Here's m. You pick one of the ordered pairs. This time, I'm going to pick this guy. Even though this is the one labeled x1, y1, that doesn't matter. You just pick one point. I like this one because it doesn't have negatives. So that's my point. Here's my slope. So when I plug into point slope, here's what it looks like. The y and the x that are plain, you leave those there. You plug in for the x1 and the y1. So I need to subtract the y value of the point, which would be 9. And then the slope, and then in parentheses next to it, I'd do x minus 2. Once you've done that, then you just solve it for y, so that way it's an mx plus b. So I would distribute the 1/2, and then I would add the 9 over, and then I would have my answer. It would be y equals 1/2 x plus 8. I did the same thing, I just used a different method. That was a lot of work. You pick which one you like better. Okay, last part here. Again, this is a lot of information. I'm fully aware of that. But the last part is about horizontal and vertical lines. So horizontal lines, hopefully you know what those look like. Let's draw a picture. So a horizontal line looks like this. all horizontal lines have a 0 slope. And if you've never seen this before, here's a way to remember. You can make like a Z and say 0. Horizontal lines, when you write the equation for the line, they always start with y. I'll show you on the back when we graph these, but a lot of people remember it's like the opposite of the axis. So like a horizontal line follows the x-axis. So when you write the equation of a line, you say y equals some number. It's kind of backwards, which is weird. So vertical lines is kind of like the same idea. Here's a vertical line, goes up and down. These have a slope that's undefined. Maybe that word rings a bell. Sometimes I remember it because you can make a U and write undefined. And then these start with X. And we'll graph one on the back so you can kind of see how that gets put into play. But here's an example they want me to do. Write the equation of the horizontal and the vertical line that goes through this point. Guys, I will say it like all year. Visuals always help in geometry and in algebra, but let's plot that point. It's right here. So I want to write the equation of the horizontal line that goes through that point and of the vertical line that goes through that point. So basically, I know the horizontal line, it's this. It's opposite of the axis, follows the x-axis, so it's got to start with a y. And basically, you just want to see where does this line hit the y-axis. This is the y-axis, this is the x. It hits the y at 2. The vertical line, it's going to start with x. Okay, and the reason is this line, this horizontal line, every single point on the line has a y value that's 2. So like that's the point -2, 2. That's the point 0, 2. -4, 2. This is 2, 2. Every single y value on that line is 2. Every single x value on this vertical line is -7. So when you wrote the equation for this line, you'd say x equals -7. That can be tricky for people. Graphing, though, usually goes over pretty well, guys. You want to be an mx plus b. That's the easiest way to graph. This first one is. So compare it. If you forget to graph this, you start by plotting the b value. That's the y-intercept, where your line crosses the y-axis. Then you count your slope, which is m, or 1/3. So it's rise over run. You go up 1 and then right 3. Hopefully that's a skill that has stuck with you from Algebra 1. I don't know, let's see. Test yourself and try number 2 for me. For number 3, this is an mx plus b. It just looks weird because the b isn't there. That just means the b value is 0, so you'd start at 0, and then you'd count your slope. Up 3, right 4. You only need 2 points to make the line, so once you got 2 points, just connect them. Okay, this one here. So this is what I'm talking about with like, it starts with x, it starts with y. I would look at this and say, whoa, this looks weird. There's only an x. That means that it's vertical or horizontal. Okay, so what you want to do is find 4 on the x-axis. This is kind of how I do it. So here's the x-axis, find 4. The x-axis goes this way. An x equals line is going to go the opposite way. So you just want to draw a vertical line through this point. On this line, every single x value is 4. For all the points, it's like 4, 1, 4, 3, 4, -4. Every single x value is 4 on that line. That's what I'm trying to show with that equation. All right. The last two here are not in mx plus b, so my suggestion is to put them in mx plus b. Here's where this skill from example 1 comes into play. This is in standard. I'm not going to do the finding the intercepts because it doesn't work out nicely, but I can show you in class if you want me to. Basically, I'm just going to solve this for y. And then divide by 2. And then it's just an mx plus b, so I can plot the y-intercept at 2. This is a negative slope, so you go down 3 and right 2. When you count slope, you guys, you always count right. If it's positive, you go up. If it's negative, you go down. But you always move right with the bottom number. This last one's in point slope. Whether you learned point slope or not, that's irrelevant. I would still get y by itself. So I would start by distributing. If you're bad with fractions, don't have any shame using your calculator. Let me show you how you plug this in. So I would just use the fraction button, which is this ABC. So I'd do like negative 2/3 times negative 3, and that's just 2. And then I would subtract the 5. So that's what I'm looking to graph. That has a y-intercept of negative 3. It's a negative slope, so I'm going to go down 2 and always move right with the bottom number. And there we are.